following podcast contains real stories and raw conversations from first responders and military personnel. Some topics may be graphic or triggering. The views expressed by the host and the guests are their own and do not represent any agency or organization. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Dispatch. We have Matt Cubbler on. It's going to be a very interesting one. I'm really excited about this. Before we get to that, please like, subscribe, share, but most of all, please subscribe. We can't do without you guys. Put in the comments what you guys like about the episode, what you want in the future. We have our merch line coming out here really soon. Please check it out. But without
It'll actually probably be out by the time this airs.
Should be out, hopefully.
Yeah.
If we can get our website stop crashing.
Yeah, well.
But without further ado, we have Matt Cubbler. He started out his career with the Army and Intelligence, transitioned into law enforcement, then federal marshals, and then transitioned back into law enforcement. Brother, thank you so much for coming on our show. We really appreciate it. How are you feeling today?
I'm good, brother. I'm glad I'm on. You know, I talked to Lori Chapman Longfritz, and she had nothing but glowing things to say about you guys. And I know Eric Lionheart had a great time. So those are people that I trust, care about. So when they say you guys are good people, then I'm happy you guys had me on.
Oh, brother, we appreciate it.
I know she talked you up. She told us, she said, you got to get in touch with Matt. You got to have Matt on. So told us all about your homestead living, and sounds like you got a piece of heaven.
Every day it doesn't suck.
Yeah.
Well, we were just talking about off camera how we're still up here in Illinois, and it's miserable. It's miserable.
Yeah, this is like the land time forgot, and the politics are very, very protective, like internally protecting itself from outside force. And it's an unregulated county, so there's no building codes, there's no permits to do anything. It's like the Wild West. I could live in a fucking ice cube if I wanted to, or I can build the Taj Mahal out of toothpicks, and nobody's gonna stop me. And you can shoot guns anywhere, and it's a great lifestyle, man.
Sounds like we need to go check out where he's located.
Yeah,
Double Tap Ranch.
Let's go, baby.
Double Tap Ranch.
Let's go. Well, brother, let's kind of dive into your military career. Why did you want to join the Army?
I didn't. When I was younger, I was always trying to dance on both sides of the fence.
Yeah.
And I did dumb shit like sell drugs, and I had a term paper writing business, and I was a hall pass forging machine. Anything I could do to make a buck when you're poor, you try to do as much as you can. Plus I worked in a pizza shop run by the mob. So I had a pretty exciting childhood and youth growing up. And then I realized that I wanted to have purpose in my life that was beyond the way I was living my life currently. And so I'd begun the process of applying for an appointment to the U.S. Coast Guard Academy.
Let's go.
I got all the way up until the final phase, and then I got cold feet because I was not a good student. I had good grades. I was able to remember and dump information onto a test, but I wasn't a good student. I certainly wasn't a good math student, and I really didn't have to try hard in those classes and we won't talk about the reason why on this show, but let's just say I had dirt and I didn't have to do a whole lot. And when I had my final interview and all, they're like, this is your course load you'll have for the first 2 years, and it was heavy math. And I panicked. And so when I turned 18, I enlisted in the Army, and thinking that I was going to get an easier path. And turns out intel, especially the SIGINT intel, the cryptanalyst world I was going into, is harder, as hard, if not harder, than what I would have done in the Coast Guard Academy, as far as understanding how to, it's a very analytical mindset you had to have, and you had to be able to, I was never good at finding out what X was, because X wasn't a thing. And that's kind of what the work was as an intel analyst. So the school was hard for me, and I really struggled. And ultimately, I did get it, and my brain opened up, and I was able to absorb and comprehend and hold on to that information. So I ended up enjoying my 4 years in the Army as an intel analyst, and then using it during the Gulf War, deployed into the Middle East. And real time was good too. And we were where I was stationed in Germany, we were a real time intel collection unit where we were spying on the Soviets and East Germans and a couple other countries where we were intercepting stuff from them. So we had real world intelligence tasking my entire time in the military. But it was during the Gulf War where it felt like it had more meaning, tracking the Republican Guard and figuring out where they're at and when the scuds were turned on and the trajectory and knowing where that missile was going and notifying Israel, or a lot of times they were coming at us. That was pretty cool to see the work that I'd learned how to do used in real time with a result that was real time.
Yeah, man, absolutely.
How did you? So you didn't go to the Coast Guard because you're like, oh, that's a lot of math, but you settled on signals intelligence.
Yeah.
All right.
Love it. Love it.
Well, I wanted to be an MP, but I was colorblind.
Okay.
And which I guess I knew, but I didn't know. I failed the test, and they're like, yeah, that took out a lot of different jobs that you would have.
Yeah, right.
Been qualified because I got a 98 on my ASVAB, so I mean I could pick any job I wanted.
Anything. Yeah.
And Intel seemed cool, and it was a different Army. I mean that's 89 to 93 is when I was in, and the Army was completely different for me than it was even at the time for other units that were more infantry, artillery, things like that. Ours was very relaxed. Not very militant at all, occasionally, but not often, and no room inspections. Like it was just a very different military, which fit into my personality quite well, actually.
Right.
Yeah, what was that? The Black Boot Army back then, huh?
Yeah, we had the leather leg boots, we called them, and they thought living in where I was stationed at was in Bavaria in the Alps and in Augsburg, Germany. And we would go to field exercises. We were a tactical unit for 2 weeks. This place called Burnout, and it snowed 17 inches one night, and everybody got frostbite because our leather boots just got soaked, and there was no like we didn't get winter gear. We had the leather shells with the wool inserts, and the insert inside of our old school camo jackets, winter jackets. So it wasn't, we weren't prepared for that. So everybody got some frostbite, which is never fun. Still to this day causes problems.
Oh, I bet, man. So how was being in Germany as like an 18-year-old kid?
Oh, dude.
Amazing.
It was awesome. I mean, first of all, you drank your face off. I did. Beer fest season starts in like March. And every city has their own fests that come through, and it all leads up and culminates Oktoberfest, obviously, in Munich, and went there 4 times, 4 different years. Prostitution, like it's just like everything that you would be thinking, like, yep, I did do that. Yep, I did do that. Like, it was great. German chicks were always trying to marry you, so play that game, you could benefit from it a lot. They all wanted to come back to the States and get themselves a GI that they could marry and get all the benefits of being an American. It was fun.
Your wife's not earshot, is she?
No, there isn't anything she doesn't know.
Okay, good.
So she's married to me on a daily basis. I haven't changed a whole lot. I'm still an idiot.
Oh boy.
Man, I got a buddy. He was in the what was that, like 2009? He went to Iraq, but he was stationed in Germany for a while. So like hearing the stories at the firehouse of his time over in Germany, a little different because there was no East and West, and he loved going down to Czech. But yeah, like dude, just what you're talking about, he's said it so many times, like having burner phones and stuff, because you give a girl your number or whatever, next thing you know, like she's hunting you down trying to marry you. Like they had some dude had this girl like break into the base and like come and hunt them down in the barracks, like middle of the night. And they're like, what the fuck? It was a huge ordeal or whatever.
Oh my God.
But
We've had many of those. My
that's
best
like
friend who I live next door to.
That's like I had one every weekend.
Well, listen to this one. So my best friend, and this is a public story, so he won't get upset. But he was banging a chick who ended up being married, which he didn't know, and her husband found out about it and showed up at the barracks. And we lived, like I said, it was very relaxed. So everybody had beer. Everybody, like, it was just parties on the, you worked hard, played hard. And so we didn't lock our barracks doors. It was just everybody, if you needed beer, you ran out of beer, you know who had beer, and you go get beer, even if they're sleeping.
Right.
And so someone comes in and screams his name, and we both wake up. We had bunk beds. He was on the top bunk, and he comes in with a butcher knife, this guy. And I'm standing on the other side of the wall lockers, and I look and I see him with this knife, and he's screaming he's going to kill my buddy. So he comes around the corner, and I just tattoo that motherfucker right in the forehead with an aluminum bat, and knocked him unconscious. But my buddy was trying to get, slept naked. He was trying to get dressed, and he fell onto the floor right in front of the guy because he had put both legs in one hole of his underwear and tripped and fell down. So those things happened a lot. And, it was a very promiscuous period of time in many of our lives. And, the alcohol flowed often. And, listen, I regret none of it. It was a blast.
Yeah, you're really making sounding being stationed at Germany really horrible.
Yeah, I highly recommend.
Oh, man, we have to go check out Oktoberfest then.
Yeah, right.
Oh, that's legit fun. Legit.
Get the
they have it's called Pass Out Hill, at least it was, where people would just drink their faces off to the point where they needed to pass out, and they would just fall asleep on the hill because it's in like a valley in the city of Munich, and like this area, probably a pre-designated festival area, but it's down in like a ravine almost, and people just pass out, and it's just very debaucherous.
Lord have mercy.
It's so much fun.
Oh, brother, I love it. We'll have to talk more off camera about that. But let's transition into your law enforcement career. So when you got back home, why did you go into law enforcement?
Well, since I was 6, I wanted to be a cop. I also wanted to be a gangster. So, but luckily, cop was the better long-term solution for me. But my mom dated a cop when I was young, and I just always wanted to be one. And at the time, you couldn't be a cop until you were 21. So I'm like, what do I do while I'm 21? I'll just go to college, which I thought was going to be the academy, and ended up being the military. And so when I got out, first thing I did was start looking for jobs. And luckily, the first test I took, I got hired full time, and end of '93, and for the next 30 years, I did the job to the best of my ability. Maybe not always to the best of everyone else's expectations, but I certainly did the job the way that I felt it needed to be done, and was able to do so without a whole lot of negative pushback around me. Some, but not a lot.
Oh, that's great, brother. Well, I'm glad you become a gangster, because you would have been a really scary gangster.
It would have been fun. I would have been more of the muscle hitman guy. Like that's probably where I would have excelled. I'm not now. I mean, maybe when I was 19, 20, not so much, but I've developed mentally, physically, and emotionally, and talent-wise over the years. So I think I probably would have been really good at that.
So how was working for the feds, brother? Did you enjoy that?
No, it was the worst 4 years and 3 months of my life.
Really?
On a professional level. Now, as far as the training, I mean, it was 9/11. They created the Sky Marshals was already in place. There was only 33 of them at the time in the whole country. And then right after 9/11, they created the Federal Air Marshal Program, and under the FAA, and they did this mass hiring, and they hired roughly 4,000 people. The number is classified, but I would tell you somewhere around 4,000. And I was one of the original hiring during that initial ramp up. And so our training was, it was like Delta Force and Navy SEALs and CIA guys training us in tactics and counter hijacking techniques and bomb defusing and all kinds of crazy shit. And so that was fun. The training was fun, but the guys I worked with were amazing. Everybody had a Delta Force guy, former Delta Force guy, as their head trainer at their field office. I was at the Philadelphia field office. So we did some intense training, and then about a year in, the TSA gets created. And then it went from being the forgotten about agents to the FAA to the TSA, which was basically the Secret Service retirees taking over the leadership positions within the TSA. And we became the Secret Service of the sky. And which is, the Secret Service has never saved the president's life,
Right.
ever. They're like over. And they're very reactionary. There's not a lot of preparation in what they do. They do site preparation, stuff like that. But as far as the actual act of protecting, it's a very uninspired way to do things. And they led the agency, the Federal Air Marshals, in that manner. And it was just the bureaucracy. You saw, so many bosses in the office that did nothing because every one of their people they were in charge of were in an airplane somewhere across the planet. And they didn't have to do any day-to-day, supervising of anybody. So I just got very frustrated by that. And I saw the bloat, and I saw the bureaucracy, as I said, and it really disheartened me. And it was my first foray into the federal government and seeing how fucked up it is, and how quickly it goes from nothing to fucked up.
Yeah.
And that was I was only there 4 years and 3 months, so that was a quick ascension into chaos. And they lost a lot of guys, and I had some opportunities to go contract work overseas, and my wife said we'd be divorced if I did, so I didn't. And then I got out and went back to local police.
How was that transition? Pretty smooth for you?
I didn't want to go back to police work.
Yeah.
I was pretty much tapped out of law enforcement at the time. I was a cop, I was SWAT, I went fast and furious for, 12 years. And I was in a really negative headspace for the system.
Yeah.
And didn't know if I wanted to be a part of it. And I'd already had, on the local side, seeing you arrest a guy and he's out that night selling drugs on the corner again, and you get a little frustrated by seeing the wheels of justice not do their job. And so I was already down on law enforcement in general, and then the feds just ruined it for me. But anyways, I did go back, and luckily I went to a place where I knew the boss, and he gave me the space and the ability to be me, and didn't really put any roadblocks or barriers in front of me, and said, just this is what I expect. You're overqualified to do this job, and do you, but don't make me look bad.
Right.
I'm like, all right. So, and it's funny, we had a conversation, he and I, and we were friends off duty. And when he hired me, I went into his office and I said, listen, man, I think it's best if we're not off-duty friends. And he's like, why not? I'm like, because I'm going to fuck up. I know I am. And I need you to be able to do your job. And I don't want to ever feel like I owe you for protecting me because we're friends. Like, I need you to be able to do whatever it is you need to do.
Yeah.
When I do fuck up. And then 17 years later, that came true. And he's screaming at me in his office, and he gets done, and I start to laugh, and he goes, what are you laughing about? I said, this is exactly the moment I was talking about when I said we couldn't be off-duty friends. I needed you to be able to do that. So we still laugh about that today. So, yeah.
Oh, brother, I love it. I also love your mentality. I did hear one thing about you is your mentality on tickets, and I couldn't agree with you more, brother. I couldn't agree with you more.
If I wrote 25 tickets in 30 years, that's probably a high number.
Oh,
total.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, people got pulled over, but I wasn't pulling you over to, I always walked up and I'm like, you were driving like a dick.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah. I said, okay, as long as you were being a dick, don't be a dick.
Right. Exactly.
Have a good day. And if I can't arrest you, then have a good day.
Yeah. Exactly.
I just don't have, I'm not, first of all, I think it's hypocritical because I clearly speed and don't always obey every traffic device there is, but
same.
But the amount of money that was charged for a mistake to me was just grotesque, and it's just like paying taxes. And you just look at it and you go, why did we need to charge somebody $250 for a speeding violation?
Nuts.
Yeah, and why do they have to get 4 points on their license or whatever? So I never really was down with the whole the penalty side of writing a ticket. So I just chose not to do it, unless somebody was a complete douche and they just talked himself into a ticket. Then that was that. But,
yeah, you earned that ticket then.
Yeah.
100%. Well, brother, let's dive into the hot topic, the Navy SEAL controversy.
Yeah.
I know it's been going around a lot lately. I mean, we just had Lori on, and kind of really puts a bad taste in your mouth. And I said this before, like, not all SEALs are bad, and it's like these typical people that want to blame a group of people for something that went wrong. That's not what this is, at least for us. But let's get into it.
Well, first, I had no desire to ever investigate Navy SEAL corruption.
Right.
Wasn't on my box to check off as far as my bucket list. But Commander Job Price, J-O-B Price, was a high school classmate of mine. We weren't close friends. We were in the same classes. We were both in the academy track. He ended up going to the Air Force Academy and then transferring his commission to the Navy after he graduated. So we knew each other. We're on the same, college preparatory classes, and we're friendly, but we didn't hang out of school. I didn't know his family. We just weren't like that. But, I was always proud that he became a Navy SEAL and went to the academy. And, I always felt like I didn't live up to what my potential was and could have went to the academy and maybe gone into a similar trajectory as him. Although I was very proud of my career and what I've done. You always wonder what could have been had I made this choice. And
right.
In 2012, December 22nd, 2012, he was found dead in his bunk with a single bullet in his head when he was commanding SEAL Team 4 in Afghanistan. And the determination was suicide. And when that word came down back in our hometown that that's what it was, people were like, that's absolutely impossible. Like, Job that's not him. Like, he would never do that. And again, people say that all the time, and people have committed suicide that you didn't think would ever commit suicide. Right. But it wasn't my place. I wasn't close with the family. It wasn't my place to question it. And so I just, accepted it. I did reach out to his sister, and I had lost a brother when I was 6 weeks before I went in the Army. He was killed in a car accident. And so I kind of knew what it was like to go through that traumatic event of losing somebody that you weren't prepared to lose. So I just sort of offered her an ear and said, listen, I'm here if you need to talk or want perspective or whatever. So we became friends over the years. And in 2019, when I had my podcast going, I had asked her if she wanted to come on the show to talk about Job, just to share her brother through her eyes. And she said yes. And then the next day she calls me and says, do you mind coming over and talking to my dad first? I said, sure. So I go over, and he hands me this book of 375 pages, basically Job's death book, and says, will you look at this and let me know if you think there's anything wrong? Like, is there something that stands out that doesn't fit what they're saying? And I'm like, man, I had a lot going on. I'm a dad. I had businesses. I was a full-time cop. I had a lot of things going on. I said, but sure. And I look at it, about a week it takes me, and I told him if it's suicide, if it really looks like a suicide, I'll tell him, and if it doesn't, I'll tell him. And so after I looked at it, I realized it probably wasn't a suicide. At least at a minimum, you couldn't get to the suicide conclusion based on the information that I had in that book.
Right.
There wasn't enough there to definitively say suicide. So I said, I'll look into it. And that was 6 years ago.
Oh, okay.
And I've been I had about a year where I took a break because I just had burned out in 2022. And then 23, I got back into it. And, 24, I really started to get some momentum after interviewing Rob O'Neill on the Jeremy Sladen, Jay Slay USA podcast. And we ended up doing 2 more episodes with Rob O'Neill talking about different topics like Roberts Ridge, where John Chapman died, and Job's case, Lone Survivor with Mark Luttrell, American Sniper Chris Kyle, Extortion 17, Benghazi. We talked about a lot of different things.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And but in that first interview, I challenged Rob on some key components to his story and told him I had heard differently, and that this is who I had heard did what he says he did. And, I had heard the recorded debrief after the raid, and he never mentions killing bin Laden. So I had some insight from some sources that had provided me this information within the SEAL community. So that went viral, and that opened up the door for some other larger podcasts for me to go on to talk about Job, but also and I realized, and as a cop, Dom, you would understand that you can see a strategy that it may be not a typical strategy to go down, but we've used ruses before, right? We've done things to draw people out during an interview process. That's what cops do. So I saw an opportunity to exploit famous SEAL stories that have some questionable truth in it, and then use that to bring attention to Job's case. So an example, I went on the Anti-Hero podcast the first time, and I talked about John Chapman. I talked about Jocko Willink. I talked about Rob O'Neill, Mark Luttrell, and they used it as reels, a lot of reels and things I talked about amongst those people. But a lot of the show I talked about Job as well, and bringing people to watch the Anti-Hero podcast because they saw a reel about me saying shit about Jocko. They learned about Job.
Yeah.
And I did that multiple times. I did it with Sean Ryan. I called him an international drug dealer, which he was. And that went viral, and people started watching that episode. So it built this momentum. And the reason I say this is because from that, I had forensic experts contact me. And they said, based on what you're explaining, the way that you're walking people through the crime scene and what you saw, things don't add up to suicide. Do you mind if I take a look at the case? And I'm like, sure. Verified who they were, of course.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I sent them everything I had, and every one of them came back and said he was murdered. And here's why. And they all had the same exact justification for why he was murdered. Blood doesn't flow in multiple directions on somebody's wound. It flows in one, wherever gravity is, right?
Right.
He had 3 different blood directional patterns on his head. And it was a direct temple shot. He was dead the minute it entered his brain.
Yeah.
So how does his body move 3 different times? The gun that he was holding did not cause the wound to his head. And it was, according to these forensic experts, which I thought it was off, but I didn't have a background in forensics to be able to say, yeah, that's why it's off. They all said that the gun was placed in his hand post-mortem. And in general, you don't stage suicides, right? You don't have to alter evidence. You don't have to do any of those things. And that's kind of what happened. And so I was able to tell this story on larger and larger platforms, getting millions of views on my episodes. And that brought a documentary film crew to the table who wants to do a documentary on John Chapman and Job and a couple other things. So a lot of things came from that initial interview with Rob O'Neill, and the strategy I used to get Job attention by using famous, questionable truths SEALs as my pathway to get those eyes on Job. Because in and of itself, Job's case just isn't something anybody gives a shit about.
Right.
It was never in the news. It didn't have a book deal behind it. There's no movie about it. So trying to take light from somebody who doesn't deserve it and putting it on somebody who does was my only intention. I will say on your show, and I said on every show, I don't care about any of these other SEALs. I don't care if the whole SEAL community is corrupt. I don't care about any of it. I care about Job Price getting his justice, and then I'll go away. Lori Chapman Longfritz has been a very good friend for 5 years, and I've done everything I can do to try to help her and promote what she's trying to accomplish with her brother and that mission. And that when you think about, I was talking about why I was exhausted with law enforcement after 12 years and how the system is broken. When you think about the John Chapman case, and you've seen the video, I'm happy to say that a lot of the work I've done has brought out whistleblowers in the communities about certain events. And Rob Harrison was the intel guy on that mission in the AC-130 that filmed the film that is widely seen about what happened with John Chapman. And then Frank Daly, who was the imagery analyst who actually pieced together who was who and where they moved throughout the entire mission to prove who did what. The fact that fact, those are facts, they're truths. They're not my truth or your truth, and they are the truth. That John Chapman did those acts, and Fritz Slabinski, the man who left him to die, the team leader from SEAL Team 6, and who also got a Medal of Honor, did not do anything that deserved a Medal of Honor. The fact that that is not the universal truth by our government, that the government hasn't said that the video evidence shows John Chapman did this, and the video evidence shows that Fritz Slabinski didn't do any of those things. And the fact that they haven't course corrected and changed the Medal of Honor for Fritz Slabinski and taken that from him. Did he do courageous shit that day? Yes. He went into a firefight on a mountain in knee-deep snow.
Right.
I'm not doubting his courageousness. I'm doubting his honor and his ability to be truthful and to not create an alternative narrative to cover up for a mistake he made on the mountain. And I'm sure Lori said on your show that she's not mad about what happened on the mountain. She's mad about what happened after the mountain.
Right.
And, the lie is the biggest problem. So when you think about the fact that John Chapman's, it's been 23 years since that happened, and it's still not the universal truth. And that's very depressing when you're thinking, as somebody who's fighting for someone's justice, who was murdered and they called it a suicide and refused to reinvestigate it or reopen the case. It's very disheartening to think that our system could be that broken to where the truth doesn't matter, facts don't matter, image matters, and what the narrative matters.
Right.
And it's not just in politics. It's everywhere.
Yeah. God, brother. Man, there's so many questions I want to ask. But
I'm here for a while.
Oh, brother. Well, so are we. The first thing I wanted to ask.
Let's
take a quick break?
Let's take a quick break. I think now's a good time to let's stop this for a second, and then we're going to come back in and let's really dig into this.
Oh, brother, I'm ready. We'll see you guys in a bit. Here at Beyond the Dispatch, there's only one first aid bag we trust for ourselves, our loved ones, and anyone we roll up on. Wait, did you bring with?
Jumpmatic.
God, I hope you guys heard that because it's a hefty bag. It literally has everything you want, need, and more. It actually even has a kitchen sink installed. It has anything from glucose readers, sterilized bandages, thermometer, ring cutter, Israeli bandages, tourniquets.
Look, here's the thing. This bag, if you're active, hunting, camping, hiking, even for a truck, you roll up on an accident, this thing can treat anything from a bug bite, a poisonous plant, to a bullet wound. It's phenomenal. It was designed by a paramedic for everybody to use. I love this thing. I carry one in my truck. I'm going to add one in my camping bag. It's great. Like I said, it carries everything. You got tourniquets. It's one of the only ones on the market that brings full diagnostics to you.
What? You sound like you're talking like you're a professional.
Might have done it at a time or two.
2 or 3 times?
2 or 3.
That thing looks durable. Like, I mean, what is it made out of?
So it's 900D Oxford fabric. So it's thick. It's durable. This is one of their newest ones. It came out earlier this year. It's wonderful. Like I love this thing.
So you're telling me this could withstand the bomb zone of my wife's car?
100%. 100%.
If you want to protect your loved ones, you want to protect yourself, camping trips, anywhere from camping trips to, I mean, literally on the road, you see a car accident. It's going to withstand anything you put at it, throw at it, and it's going to provide the first aid that you need at the time of your greatest need.
Yeah.
You will not be disappointed. I thought we had a code.
We do. So if you visit their website, jumpmedic.com, you're going to find that they have this bag along with many other options. You could even build your own. And if you use our code BTD10, you'll get 10% discount.
Promise you won't be disappointed. Provide the care and attention that your loved ones need for yourself, along with people you don't know who are in the time of need.
Completely. And don't forget, use the code BTD10. Save some money.
All right, guys, so we're back from break. One question I really wanted to know, to start off, this portion is what was inside that folder that that was handed to you. Was there GSRs? Like, what type of evidence was included in that 350-page document?
A lot of it was his personnel records, his training records, his medical records, NCIS investigative notes, like actual printed out forms. I went to this place on this date, talked to this person, and then the general overview. All the witness statements, which were highly redacted for who they were and things of that nature. We couldn't get any names out of them. I ended up getting the names, but there were crime scene photos. There was sketches of the room. There was annotations from NCIS about what they did or didn't do. There were photographs that were missing that ended up never being recoverable because of a broken disc, quote unquote, that were essential to determining whether or not anybody might have been behind Job when the trigger was pulled that would have blocked any of the blowback blood spatter from hitting the wall that was 8 inches from him. All those photos were lost, but
and they don't have have a backup for that. You're telling me you're NCIS and you don't have a backup, like a hard drive,
no.
Nothing.
Nope. At least according to the Department of Navy. But there was no GSR, there was no DNA, there was no ballistics in what I was given.
I want to pause. Sorry to pause you. What's a GSR?
Gunshot residue. So
okay, perfect.
Yeah. So if you shoot a gun, the gunpowder should be on your hand.
The little like swab thing they do.
None of those things were in there. There's 350 pages, or 60 pages, or whatever it was. And the statements were all the same. You could tell that there was a coordination component. They use words like aloof, multiple different statements. Not a word you use very often.
No.
Especially not in the military.
Some Kerry would use.
Right, because he's a super smart historian.
I don't know about super smart.
Let me digress real quick. So my best friend, I'm a conspiracy theorist, right? I wear every aluminum foil hat you can possibly, because it's fun to me. I really enjoy
it's a blast
going down those rabbit holes.
Same.
So he's always trying to give me the historical perspective on why my theory is wrong. And so I bought for his birthday, I took a baseball hat, I wrapped it in aluminum foil, and I put duct tape across the front, and it said historian, but it was an aluminum foil hat. So, because he kept saying, I'm a historian. I'm like, first of all, history is written by the winners.
Right. It's true.
I don't know if that shit's true.
Right.
I don't know if in 1492 Columbus sailed the ocean blue. I don't know.
Oh, brother.
I wasn't there. I said, so I'm going to say that there's a good chance there might be some fucking lies in there.
Oh yeah, brother. We're gonna have to have you back on for a conspiracy episode for sure.
We can go down them all. I've done it since my first book report I ever did was on a book about the Kennedy assassination, and how I made my claim was that Oswald could not have shot Kennedy, and I was 7th grade. And then I did the Lindbergh baby kidnapping and a couple others when I was younger, and then I just have always been involved. So back to the story at hand. So all that stuff that was in the book, and then all the stuff that wasn't in the book. I did an interview with a Military Times reporter, and I said, if you think about the book being on the outside, it says the complete and official investigation into Joe Price's death. And that's the equivalent of a 1,000-piece puzzle set box with the picture on the outside. I said, when you open up the box or open up the book, you have 250 pieces. And you can't make it look like the picture on the outside of the box because there's not enough information.
Right.
But what you do see is enough for you to go, that doesn't look right, that doesn't look right, that doesn't look right, that doesn't look right. How the fuck did that happen? How the fuck did that happen? How the fuck did that happen? Like that's what I was going through when I was reading. And some of those initial things that stood out to me were, number one, Job had always slept in the newt. And he always slept with a pillow in the crook of his arm on his left side with the pillow here. That's how he was shot. I don't know anybody that's ever been shot by themselves in their sleep just out of nowhere, right? No premeditation, no getting in my uniform, no note, no
right,
whatever. I've never seen a suicide that occurred in the very natural state that Job was found in.
Right, no drinking, no drugs, nothing.
No, yeah. So that stood out to me, number one. Number two, he was on his back with his pistol in the right hand, loosely in the right hand, across his chest, right under his chin, and his head was facing to the right, which was the opposite of which the direction it was in when he got shot. So he was facing away from the left side of his body. And I couldn't figure out how his body got into that specific position on its own had he been shot by himself on his left side at a 45-degree angle down. How did he end up there? So I wrestled with that. The minimal amount of blood on his hand, his right hand, his shooting hand. Very, very little blood, a couple specks, pinpoint specks of blood on his hand, but noticeably not as much as I would expect from a point blank, unsuppressed shot. The gun being in his hand, I couldn't come to that determination how that happened. I have seen guns in people's hands in suicides, but not based on the way he ended up, how it could have been in his hand with all those things happening. The fact that when Job was found dead by the Command Master Chief Jeff Peeler, who was also the last one to see him alive the night before around 11:45, that they notified NCIS, who was in the building where Job was killed, which is a green mile, which is, it's got offices, command offices, and then the command staff has their bunks in there, their rooms. But it's like a concrete metal building, so it's not something that you can, get away with, farting or shooting a gun off without somebody knowing. So NCIS comes in, identifies that he's dead. They bring in the medical person. Medical person says, yes, he's dead. They pronounce him. And then the door gets locked, and the NCIS agent gives the key back to Jeff Peeler and says, don't let anybody in this room.
Right.
Now, as a cop, what is the rule number one of a crime scene?
Oh, you protect it at all
costs.
costs.
You're the first one on scene. Right. It's your crime scene until properly relieved.
Yeah.
Right? Jeff Peeler is a suspect. And without knowing what happened in that room, everybody who possibly had access to that room is a suspect. This NCIS agent, I'm sure there are radios to talk to whoever he needed to talk to, or sat phones, or whatever the case might be. And he chose to leave to go get another NCIS agent or two and give the key to the room to Jeff Peeler, who's not in law enforcement and is a potential suspect. For 9 hours, that room was left unchecked.
What the fuck?
And 9 hours later, NCIS returns to process the crime scene. Now, you also know that in any good criminal case, that there has to be crime scene containment and there has to be a chain of custody of all evidence.
Right.
So absent knowing what was there to start with, you can't assume that what they found 9 hours later was the same thing.
Right.
Because access to that room was not secured by anyone in law enforcement. So anything that will come from now until oblivion, from that crime scene as potential evidence will be seen. As a good defense attorney, you'd go, how do I know you didn't plant that evidence?
Right.
That there's nothing in that room that will ever be able to be used in court to find somebody guilty of murdering their commanding officer. And I believe that was an intentional act. That they let them have access to that, knowing that anything that is found in there is not going to be able to be used. And it also gave an opportunity to stage the scene in the manner in which they needed it to be found and observed and photographed and things of that nature. So those are the big ones that really stood out. A nuanced one, because I didn't know at the time some certain facts, but I didn't know whether or not Job had gunshot residue in his hand because there was no reports for it. But there was no report of a gunshot from any of the witnesses or any of the statements that were taken. Two people, Jeff Peeler, the guy that found him, said he smelled sulfur at 5:45 in the morning, but didn't think anything of it. And the JAG officer said he heard something around 2 a.m. that sounded like a bobcat dropping a pallet of MREs onto a hard surface, like a clap sound almost, but loud, at around 2 a.m. I have other statements from a guy that was up until 2:30 in the morning who heard nothing. So the 2 a.m. guy, if his 2 a.m. is correct, the JAG guy, you can dismiss that because there's no secondary person confirming the noise.
Right.
So it really bothered me that there was no noise. And I'm like, how did he, there's no way that gun that he's holding wouldn't make such a loud report in a concrete metal structure that it wouldn't wake the whole fucking building up. And by the way, there were manned offices 24/7 inside that building.
Right. Someone would have heard.
Right. So I struggled with that. So I began investigating, and through the course of the last 6 years, I've finally received, November of 24, I got my FOIA request for DNA, GSR, and ballistics. One of the things that I didn't even think about, but the casing was found underneath Job's lower back.
Yeah, it gets there.
Yeah, and the bullet was found underneath Job's bed at the upper left-hand corner of his bed, where the head would be, behind the only spot under his whole bed that wasn't covered with a Pelican box is this one little corner, and that's where the bullet was, and that's where the blood had flown off the bed down the wall and pulled at the bottom. I don't know, and I can't. They've never shown through any schematics on their recreation of the crime scene how that bullet ended up there. They just said it did. And again, I didn't have ballistics. So the ballistics comes back, and it shows that the gun that Job was holding fired the bullet and expelled the casing that was found in the room. I said, okay. That's not hard to believe, A, but also not hard to stage. I could take that gun outside, pull the trigger, retrieve, especially in a sandy environment, retrieve the bullet, take the casing, bring it into the room, drop it in some blood, put the casing under the body, put the gun back in his hand, and say that he shot himself with it. Okay, that's a possibility. The gun itself, when you're looking at the DNA testing, if you're looking at a bullet that you're trying to determine whether or not was the bullet that caused the death of another person, one of the things that you have to do is determine whether or not that bullet, outside of sitting in blood that you then tested for DNA to say it was Joe's, which of course it was his, and nobody else's blood in there. But to prove that it went in through his head, there would be trace amounts of hair, skin, skull fragments, brain matter, just going through the one side and then coming out the other side,
right?
Skull, skin, brain matter, and hair, right? So there would be some version of matter on that bullet that you could test to see whether or not it went through Job's head. They didn't test for that. Never did. The gun was never tested for anything on it. I couldn't see on any of the pictures any blood or brain matter anywhere on that gun. But they never swabbed the gun for it. So you don't know whether or not that gun was used, because there would be those things on it if it were used to commit the crime. And then finally, the GSR, they did test for GSR. According to the notes, they tested for GSR, but they didn't say where. And then when I got the report back, the on-scene GSR testing, if you were testing, and again, I was a cop for 30 years, and this was kind of second nature for me to think about it, but where would be the first place you would look for GSR residue, gunshot residue?
His hand.
Oh, his hand. You would think that would be the first fucking place. No, they didn't test his hands for GSR.
Get the fuck out.
They tested the bed sheet on the opposite side of him where the bullet exited, and they tested the wood plank that was underneath his mattress on his cot. That's the two places they tested for gunshot residue. Never tested his hands. Now, all of that is all circumstantial. It doesn't help their case for suicide. It helps my case for the cover-up, because there's the things that you should know you didn't derive from any of this information. The thing that is very telling is that when the note, and this is I think the fatal flaw in this investigation, was the NCIS agent, who's an officer, put in his notes after they were done processing the crime scene, after they came back after 9 hours. He said to the Command Master Chief, Jeff Peeler, "No one is to touch this body." They had bagged his hands, sealed it with evidence tape.
Right.
His bedding, everything goes along with him, right? That's all evidence, right? And it gets put into the body bag and taken back to the medical people in preparation to send him back to the States for his autopsy. So in the notes, the NCIS agent says, I did not believe, based on his body language, that he was going to obey that order. So what happens? Navy SEALs tell the medical people, take the gloves off, wash his entire body, scrubbed his hands, re-bagged them with new evidence tape.
Wow.
Got him dressed in his uniform, doctored up his bullet hole wound with a bandage, put a watch cap on, and destroyed any physical evidence that could have ever been derived from that body and the surrounding sheets and all that, because they decided to disobey an order, which nobody was ever held accountable for.
That's huge.
That's huge. It's gigantic. And even the pathologist at Dover Air Force Base said there are a lot of questions as to whether or not this was suicide. However, and that the hands were clean. Like if you look at the photos of when they're unbagging the body, a medical examiner will take pictures of everything that's in the bag, every part of the body, every piece of jewelry or whatever, everything that's photographed.
Right.
If you look at Job's hands from the crime scene and you look at Job's hands from the autopsy, they're crystal clean. And he says that that GSR testing was done, but there was no GSR found on his hands.
Well, shit, because they fucking washed his whole body.
Right. So he had questions about the veracity of the suicide claim, but did what he was told and declared it a suicide because there was no other information outside of suicide provided to him. So the final piece of the puzzle that we talked about was the fact that nobody heard the gunshot. And when I finally got the autopsy photos, I saw on his head a semicircle stippling on the entry wound. And it's the same diameter as a SIG 226 9mm suppressed.
I was going to ask you about the contact wound on the head from the entrance wound.
Yeah. So it would, the amount of blowback, blood, brain, whatever on the gun would be minimal. A. B, the amount of blood on his hands would be reduced because as the blood's coming back, it's spreading out. And if you're now 10 inches away or however long that suppressor was away from the point of impact, that's going to drastically reduce the amount of blood that would appear in his hands. And that's why I said that the wall where the blood blowback splatter would have been, those pictures were destroyed, and there's no other copy that exists. And that would have shown, I believe, that someone was behind him and that there would have been a void of blood behind him because of someone's body getting in the way of that blowback.
Right.
And that's why those photos no longer exist. That's my theory. I don't have proof on that, but that, based on the angle which he was shot, someone would have had to have been behind him.
Now you say it was 45-degree angles now, or 45-degree angle. Was it up, down? Like how was he holding it?
He was, so.
Or how are they saying he held it?
He was on his left side and he was holding it up like this. So there's no way that he would have been able to retain holding the weapon if it was 10 inches farther away, right? So, and the angle where it came in, he wouldn't have been able to get his finger on the trigger in order to get the same spot. So all of those things I knew already. I knew for the last 6 years, I knew what the answer was going to be, but I got the reports for the GSR ballistics and DNA at the end of 24. But I already knew that was the scene that I was looking at was going to dictate what the answers were on those reports.
Right. Now, real quick, so the entrance wound was up at a 45-degree angle down. Now, where was the exit?
Mm-hmm. Out the other side. Went through his pillow, went through the mattress, nicked the bed, and then ricocheted, hit a desk, and then they're saying ended up in a place that it couldn't have ended up. Everything about, and again, it was an inept investigation, but I would argue that it was intentionally inept in order to assure that no one could ever be held accountable. If the truth ever came to light, no one would ever have to admit to the truth because there's no way to prove who did anything. When the suspects, and we can talk about the why if you want, the suspects in this case are his men. And there's a small chance that it was a local Afghani who may have somehow had access to the building and snuck in without anybody seeing him and shot him in the head and left. I know that is because I don't know the answer to exactly who. I believe I know who, but absent evidence or any way of linking that person to the crime scene, it's just conjecture. I do have circumstantial evidence on the why that puts certain people as probable suspects versus possible. And Job was there in June. So SEAL Team 4 relieved SEAL Team 2 in September of 2012. Job went over in June of 2012 to do a pre-deployment workup with the commander of SEAL Team 2, Mike Hayes. And it just so happened to be around the same time that there was an event that happened where SEALs and local Afghan police brought somebody in for questioning for something that happened at a checkpoint, and they tortured him. And within a day, the guy died after they released him from the injuries sustained from the interrogation techniques. And there was an investigation being done, and Job was brought in to be an extra set of eyes, command level eyes, to look at it, and they asked for his belief on what should be done, and he recommended court-martial. So he leaves. Unbeknownst to him, there was some radio chatter picked up by the intel guys there, the Army intel guys, that the Taliban was going to retaliate for the death of one of their locals. So Job comes back in September. No retaliation occurs during the June-September time period. The forward operating base moves 60 kilometers away. It's now forward operating base Ripley in Tarankot, Afghanistan. Job takes over. No one briefs him on this retaliation threat. Now that he is the SEAL team, they don't care what SEAL team they kill. They just want to get retribution. And within the first 2 months of the deployment, 2 Army guys die. They were PSYOP guys who were working with the Afghan National Police on interviewing potential suspects, and they were killed by the National Police guys. So those 2 guys died, and then 2 SEALs died in November. One of them was an ambush, and one of them was a guy that Job was pretty close with. And everybody, the only real evidence, not even evidence, it's contextual at best, that anyone ever offered as far as suicide being the narrative is that Job was depressed, that he was withdrawn, that he was not sleeping well and not working out, and just struggling is what everybody said. And they used a lot of terms like aloof, which means that people were colluding, because I don't know if I've ever used the term aloof on my own accord.
Right.
But apparently a bunch of Navy SEALs did at the same time. But that's the only piece of evidence that could make someone say, well, he was depressed, so I guess he committed suicide. And I'm sure you guys, you've been in a shooting, you were injured on the job. You may have some PTSD. You probably suffered with some depression. I can clearly see you were both alive. And depression is not an indicator of suicide. It is a contributing factor, but it's not an indicator.
Right.
That's the only thing that's ever been said. And that's everybody's argument from anybody I've talked to that was there. You weren't there. You didn't see the man he became, blah, 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 blah. And again, I stipulate to that. I'm sure he was broken up about losing one of the guys that he thought very highly of, and that, he was struggling with the command's decisions to force him to do daylight raids. He was forcing there was a sexual assault that occurred with his guys in a local Afghani. There was missing ASOP money, and ASOP money is CIA money used for things like paying off mullahs and buying informants, and you kill the wrong person in a raid and you pay off their family. Like anything you need over there, this ASOP money is designated for. And they would get pallets of cash. And $40,000 went missing. Job found out about it. He approached the guy that took the money, told him he had 48 hours to get it back. around the same time, he told a couple people back home, friends of his and his wife, that there's a lot of things that happened during this deployment that are going to have to be dealt with when he gets back. It didn't really get into details, and then 2 days later, he's dead.
Now, what was his wife's? So you spoke with his wife. Now, what did she say his demeanor was like? Did she indicate anything with depression? Right.
Nope.
And I mean, that's going to be like one of his lifelines, right? One of his support systems. He's going to tell her if he's having a hard time. I mean, you can ask my wife when after my shooting, I was having a hard time. So she knows.
And you also would have some other secondary, for the most part, it's not every time. There are always anomalies, but a search for suicide, ways to commit suicide, or a letter, or like some pattern prior to that would help build the understanding of what this person's mindset was just prior to committing suicide. None of that existed. He was on a low dose Valium for having difficulty sleeping. He was taking a Benadryl for an upper respiratory infection, and he had gotten some IVs about a week before he died. And he was on prescribed. He wasn't prescribed, but he had tramadol in his system too. Now, another theory I have, and I can't prove it because the way that those drugs leave your body, especially post-mortem, is much faster, right? There's certain ways they can test for it, but it's hard to tell how much was in his system at the time of death.
Right.
I believe he was drugged with a concoction of those things to the point where he was rendered, so incapacitated that he couldn't resist. And that's how he was murdered. I don't think it was brute force he was 6'2", 230.
Big dude.
Yeah, he wasn't a tiny guy. So that's what I believe, that's all tangential. There's no science behind that other than the fact that it was in the system. And you wonder how somebody could be murdered in their sleep without anybody knowing it. That's one way.
Right. Did the autopsy indicate any signs of a struggle, any self-defense wounds? Nothing.
Nope.
Oh, well.
Which is, again, that could be a sign of suicide because they did it to themselves. But it wasn't until I got those forensic pathologists who, when I said that the crime scene didn't look right, that him laying in the bed didn't look right, I couldn't understand how his head got in the position it was in, or the gun got in the position it was in, or how the bullet hole was created by that gun when it looks like there was a suppressor used. The forensic guys finally all came together, and they don't know each other. There was no colluding between them. They don't even know they exist, each other, as far as this case. All came to the same conclusion that it was murder. And now it's a matter of just getting the powers that be to give a shit. And I've been very vocal that I'm giving them an exit ramp that they can use today. And it's a clerical decision. Change it in the computers, release his pension, release his life insurance policy. I'll sign an NDA, I'll disappear.
Yeah.
And I'll do that today. Or I burn the village.
It's looking like we're burning the village, brother.
Listen, might need a bigger boat. Or in that movie with, it's always used on Instagram or TikTok, when you're like, this is the kind of friend you want to have. When Ben Affleck walks in and he's talking he's like, we're about to go do this. I can't tell you what we're doing or where we're going, but it's going to be dangerous, and I need to know if you're in. He's like, Jeremy Renner's like, who's driving?
Yeah, whose car we taking?
Whose car we taking?
Yeah, whose car we taking?
So,
I said that to my brothers all the time.
So, that's where we're at. And again, I don't want to be in that position. I don't want to have this. I don't want to have, and I'm one of many people who've been looking into SEAL corruption. I have a team of guys that I work with now that have been doing this for years, decades, in the community, and that have been trying their damn. They've had congressional hearings, and nothing gets done. It is circle the wagons. Everybody shut the fuck up. It'll pass. We'll have something else will come up that'll take over the news cycle. Whatever. There's always a way around the attention that's coming. We did with Lori the CBS piece with the Medal of Honor Museum. That should have been enough to get a congressional hearing.
Right.
Because Anna Polina Luna was part of it. Her husband's a CCT. And then all of a sudden Anna Polina Luna shits the bed on some bill she was trying to get done, and everybody fucking hated her. so nobody gave a shit about her. So she then backed off on the Chapman thing and gave Ryan Zinke, the senator from Missouri, turned him over to, he was a former SEAL, over to Lori, and he just was a condescending prick. And good for Lori, she told him to go fuck himself.
Rightfully so, yeah.
And she's no pushover. She's a tough lady.
Oh yeah, we had the pleasure of meeting her in person. It was definitely we enjoyed it. She definitely is very, very passionate, and I love it.
So, just like going over all this, you and I, like, we had a couple phone calls, and I know in one of the calls we were kind of talking about this. It is astonishing, like, the amount of clout that the Navy has in government, right? Like, just from stuff like this, or, you know, historically they have, right? I mean, you look back to Teddy Roosevelt, like, the Navy was, I mean, they showed our power to the world, right? Great White Fleet, sail around, tell everybody who we are, you know. And after World War II, to stay relevant, just nuking Bikini Atoll, just to show, like, hey, like, our ships are still here. Like, that's the whole reason the Navy orchestrated that whole thing, was to just show their relevancy. It sets the stage for why this is where it is, because since the beginning of this republic, the Navy has been the biggest swinging dick in the room, and they're definitely trying to hold on to that.
For sure. And if you think about the GWAT era specifically, which is really what this is about, you know, when there's the military industrial complex, you know, ensured that this wasn't just a Gulf War, right, with 100 hours of ground offensive and it's over and everybody in Iraq gives up. This was we need to make sure that we make this last. And when you start using when you start going into multiple countries in a pretty short period of time with military offensive wars, you begin to limit your effectiveness. And, you know, when they were in Iraq and Afghanistan at the same time, they pretty much said Afghanistan is going to be the Navy for Navy SEALs, even though there's no water. And the Army, SF, and Delta and Rangers were going to handle Iraq. And that was kind of the idea behind it. And that's, you know, when you think about John Chapman, that's early in the war. That's Anaconda. That's one of the first major offensives in the war, Operation Anaconda. And Navy SEALs were not prepared. They'd just gotten there 24 hours before, roughly.
Right.
The team that ended up doing the assault, they didn't. You know, Blaber, who was on the Anti-Hero and threw a lot of shade on John Chapman, which makes no sense, but he did. He was basically put on the JV squad by the Navy during that operation. He was a Delta colonel, and you know, he was relegated to just sort of being on the sidelines. And the Navy shit the bed. But what they figured out they could do is they could change narratives by promoting and awarding.
Right.
Because most people they're going to be like, why would they give him a Purple Heart and a Bronze Star with Valor and promote him to the next rank if he was so bad?
Right.
Right? The general public will think that. And that's all they care about, is what does the general public think?
Yeah.
And when you look at the 23-year conspiracy and cover-up of Roberts Ridge, and then everything that happened in between March of 2002 and the end of the withdrawal of Afghanistan in 21 or whenever that was, a lot of fucked up shit happened with the Navy SEALs. And in each and every one of those opportunities to tell the truth, they came up with a way to change the narrative, create a propaganda piece for recruiting, and push out people to represent the brand of the Navy SEALs, like Chris Kyle, Marcus Luttrell, Rob O'Neill, who is despised by everybody in the community. But they don't stop him from going out and talking about being the guy that killed bin Laden, because it's good for recruiting.
Yeah.
They don't have to acknowledge the truth of it. They just don't stop him from doing it.
They have that no publicity is bad publicity mentality.
Yep. And you know, Mark Luttrell recently came out on Rob O'Neill's podcast or well, Rob was with him, whether it was his podcast or Rob O'Neill's, stating that he didn't write the book. The book was given to him when he came back, and they gave him a handler, they gave him a PR person, they gave him classes on how to give interviews, and said, "This is now your full-time job. Go out and tell the story."
Wow.
Right.
Well, I mean,
he said that.
That's an ultimate PR move right there, right? Because you have two, and even same with Chris Kyle. Like, he had a book, then he had a movie, and then Luttrell had a book, had a movie. Like, that's like the ultimate recruiting right there.
And then you have Jocko, right? Jocko's the extreme ownership guy. Well, his fucking deployment was a complete and utter shit show. He was lieutenant commander. I mean, just a shit show. And, you know, talk about extreme ownership. Well, own your fuck ups. He didn't own his fuck ups. He doesn't have extreme shit. But without Chris Kyle, there's no Jocko, because he was on Jocko's team, and he was being sent out daily to go out and just start popping off as many Iraqis as he possibly can. And Jocko is a bazillionaire. He just sold the rights to a book that he didn't even write, a children's book, something Warrior Kid. I forget what it's called. Anyways,
I think I know what you're talking about.
To a movie production house for $84 million. Wow. And Chris Pratt's going to play him in the movie. And it's all in lies. He didn't write the books.
Yeah.
He doesn't know shit about extreme ownership. His podcast sucks balls. All he is he's like Batman. Like, it's like he has this dark, you know, everything's black and whitish, and him and the other guy, I don't know what his name is.
Echo. I think his name is Echo.
Echo
Yeah.
Charles, Echo, whatever.
That's it, Echo Charles.
You know, it's a shtick. It's all a shtick. And they come across as if they're this expert in whatever it is they're being experts in. But without Chris Kyle, there's no Jocko, and vice versa. And, you know, Mark Luttrell's mission, you know, he was a SDV guy. He wasn't even a white team member. He wasn't trained in mountain war fighting. He was doing underwater submarine shit.
Right.
And they put these four guys who were woefully underqualified to do the mission they sent them out to do. And that's what caused that to turn into a complete and utter shit show.
Yeah.
But they won't say that. They'll turn it into a victory. They take every failure and turn it into a victory by creating a hero out of the story, especially ones when there's only one person that lived, Mark Luttrell. So they can then promote that as the way it actually went down, that everyone fought valiantly against hundreds of fucking Taliban. There was like 12, but that's the story, right? So that's how they've been doing it for 23 years.
I think not to cut you out, I think the thing that amazes me about that is it was Red Wings was what, 17 lost or 17 lost?
Oh, Red Wings, yeah, that was, yes, from the helicopter crash.
Yeah, I think 17 total, right? And
I think so.
Yep.
I mean, a dude made a phone call on a sat phone, unsecured sat phone, got a CH-47 loaded with dudes, shot down and killed, and they gave him a Medal of Honor. Like, you know, it just was all part of that narrative. Like, oh fuck, we fucked up. Like, how do we spin this?
Yeah. Who's
like Rob O'Neill didn't know that I knew that he was actually sitting on the helicopter. Him and another guy, Reed is his last name, were at Bagram when the helicopter that ended up being shot down and killed 17 guys. Wanted to get out there and go save Marcus and the guys, and the boss for SEAL Team 6 said, "Off, we're not putting any Tier 1 assets on that helicopter." And lo and behold, he gets shot out of the sky with they say an RPG, but it was an SA-7.
Yeah.
There's multiple helicopter pilots that saw the turning of RPGs fly straight line, and SA-7s are heat seeking, and there's a plume of smoke and a corkscrew turning motion that multiple helicopter pilots testified to. So.
Oh shit.
But the official story is still an SA-7. I mean, it's an RPG. I mean, so I mean, it's they will control everything. Even when the truth comes out, they don't ever acknowledge it. Just like Chapman's video, like they just won't talk about it. They won't discuss it, and that's why my offer to Pete Hegseth is, dude, I won't talk about it. This is their MO. This is what you do.
Yeah.
I'll go away. get it done. I'll sign an NDA. I'll disappear. You don't have to acknowledge it ever happened. You don't have to acknowledge that you changed anything. Job's wife will sign an NDA. She'll be happy just to get the pension and the money because she earned it to be his wife and putting up with having a Navy SEAL as her husband for all those years. And,
Yeah.
you know, daughter could use that money. Like there's
Absolutely.
a lot of good that can be done from that.
Yeah. I mean, who's the new Delta guy that's kind of popped up on the scene? Is it McPhee?
Oh, John McPhee.
John
Sure.
McPhee. Yeah. He even talks about Marcus Luttrell and their event, right? And he talks about, he's like, that never would happen. He's like, I don't get it. I don't understand how that happened. He's like, that never would have happened. So even he's kind of calling it out too.
Well, there's, I mean, when it comes down to Operation Red Wings, there's a lot of evidence out there to refute everything that happened. I mean, even down to, do you know offhand what unit's AO that was, if you remember?
I'm trying to remember I talked to a ranger who was there doing the cleanup, and I cannot remember. I know that there was a flood that happened that night, and all the evidence got washed away. Right, yeah. So
well, yeah, shit. I mean, even those rangers got the hell beat out of them trying to get there. But no, there, whoever, man, I wish I could remember offhand. There's whatever unit's AO that was, and this is just like a regular unit. I believe it was Army. They've said like all of our, like everything we knew about that terrain, it could support like 12 Taliban fighters, if that. They're like, there wasn't this horde of hundreds.
Yeah.
There was nothing. So, and I mean, all the evidence
and the video
afterwards.
Came out.
Yeah.
The Taliban video that came out showed there was like 10 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and granted, you could say like, okay, well, that guy was just like in a group, right? But there's so much out there that's like, yeah, no. Like,
and
you guys,
the guy that found him.
Yeah, right.
He's come out and said he was not injured like he says. He had all his ammo.
That's what I was going to say. He had his entire loadout of ammo, I believe. I mean,
11 mags.
You know, here's the deal. Like those guys still went through shit. You know, I don't doubt that more than 3 lost their lives. A lot of men lost their lives in that, and it just comes down to the Navy trying to spin it. You know,
and at some point in time, it's the boy who cried wolf.
Right.
Like when does and I said this to O'Neill. I said, listen, man, you tell me you did 400 missions. I'm telling you 399 of them, you're a fucking rock star. But on this one, you're a fucking liar.
Yeah.
And you're going to be remembered as the liar. You know, you could build the Golden Gate Bridge, but you suck one dick, you're a cocksucker.
I like that. I'm going to have to use that.
Okay, I never heard.
That's what happened.
I've never heard of the Golden Gate Bridge though. That was a good touch to it. Yeah. Now,
my dad told me that when I was younger.
That's a good one.
Always stuck.
Now you said so. The Navy is saying that it was an RPG that shot down the helicopter, and you were saying it's a what rocket?
SA-7.
Okay,
a Russian surface to air
Okay,
missile.
so it still could have been the Taliban, correct?
Oh, 100%. They had
him.
They had him in country at that time. Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to clarify for everyone listening because I'm not really privy to that situation, and then also the weaponry that they handled. So that's more of a carry question.
It's more of, for me with everything within the SEALs. Again, I don't care about any of it. I don't care about Marcus Luttrell. He could do what he did or didn't do what he did. That doesn't impact me in my life. And I'm not even interested in investigating it. I just know stuff because people want to tell me stuff while I'm investigating Joe's stuff.
Right.
And when I realize that information is money, right, I can use that as collateral and leverage that being privy to this information has helped me with Job's investigation. But I don't have any desire to dig deeper into any of these other cases. I know what I know. I've said what I know in 35,000 foot view form, and I don't need to get granular with any of it. And I don't like being the spokesperson for the SEAL community. There's dozens of Navy SEALs that give me information.
Right.
Or that aren't coming out and talking about it themselves. Eric Deming is a guy that came out. He was a retired Navy SEAL who he put out a lot of explosive stuff. And he's a great guy. We've never met. We've been on Zoom calls many times, talked on the phone dozens and dozens of times. But I just told him, I said, whatever you say, just have receipts. And he said, I
that's
got
the biggest
receipts.
thing. Have receipts.
We're just in a really fucked up period in our country's history. And I'm, it's exciting. I'm not sad that I'm alive for it. I'm tired, right? I'm 54. I did my time. I've spent a long time living in the public service space, and I'm done helping. I'm ready to just do nothing and raise some animals and hunt.
Enjoy your
fish.
life as you earned it, brother. 100%. And I know we talked about off camera, and I think what really kind of hurts the most is the fact, like, we talked about the Chapman situation. We understand that shit happens when bullets start flying. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. Your guys are getting shot up. You don't know what's happening. You're knee waist deep snow on a fucking mountaintop, and it's just pure chaos. You already had a helicopter crash. You lost 2 guys. What have you. Just own up to it. That's the thing that hurts the most, I think, in my eyes, and what pisses me off the most is that they just continue to lie about it. They continue to cover it up, and the sheer fact that he's taking credit for something that he didn't do, and get a Medal of Honor for it, and then be put in the museum, and then push out Chapman and throw him to the curb of what he actually did to save those SEALs' lives. Like, I don't know how these people sleep at night, man.
Well, it comes down to the brand, right? Like, I think that's kind of what Matt was touching on here with GWAT and the military industrial complex. Like, they've seen the money, they've seen the power, right? Yeah. Like, everything that's being done, and I can't remember if it's you that's referred to it or where I saw it, but John being the original sin and all this, right? Like, that's early on.
Mine.
Okay,
I coined that.
Yeah, you coined that. We used it. I love it. No, it's just like it's expanded, right? Like they spent 20 years over there realizing what they could achieve as long as they just protected the brand. And I'm sure a large part of that is not just solely to the Navy. It's just, they've got the optics, right? Like, I am sure it's everywhere in the military.
Well, if people, and I've talked about this in many other podcasts, and I'm not afraid to talk about it, but this is the Navy SEAL brand is a criminal syndicate. It's a like the mob, like the way that they leverage power and leverage things on people to get them to comply is just like the mob. It is very intentional. It's organized. It's structured. There is a pattern on how they get people to heel and comply so that they can continue to live in this fictitious world where every Navy SEAL is a fucking hero and every movie you see is true. And the reality is that's not true. I had a SEAL Team 6 guy unburden his soul on me about how he was held over to coals after following a direct order from his boss on a mission in the Middle East where they killed an entire compound of people, that women, children, didn't matter. Everybody got killed.
Wow.
And they were ordered to do that. And then when it was done, he was asked to do something with ASOP money. And he said no. And they said, well, it's really going to suck when you get brought up on war crimes.
Wow.
And now all of a sudden, a guy that his entire life is built on, I'm a SEAL and the Brotherhood, long live the Brotherhood. Now they're going to turn on me if I followed an order.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to say you didn't follow an order, that you did that on your own. And everyone else in his team is going to say, yes, that's what he did. And there isn't going to be anybody that's going to say, well, this guy he did the right thing by following an order. It's not his fault. No one. Because everyone's under the same thumb.
Right.
And that's been going on from Roberts Ridge through the exit of Afghanistan and probably still today.
Yeah.
And that's a real thing. That's not conspiracy theory. That's actually happening.
I mean, I kind of touched on this a little bit with Lori's episode when we were talking about things. It makes sense when you look at like the history of the Navy SEALs and how they came about, right? Like going back to Vietnam and, converting from UDT to the actual Navy SEAL brand and their transition through like the 80s and 90s and getting involved in counterterrorism and stuff like that. But the real point of that is like the guys that forged that unit, they were cowboys. Like in Vietnam, SEALs were cowboys, man. They were wearing Wrangler blue jeans. They were wearing high tops. I mean, they were just cut loose. They were tasked with different CIA, directives through like MACV and SOG and all that. Like there was no oversight with them, and I feel like well, and that's kind of what I'm getting at is it's just ingrained, like, and it's grown to this level, right? They were a small community at that point, and those guys that's what they learned have now transitioned it into like what you're saying, like just a mob syndicate. It's just, I don't know, like this whole. I never saw us on this road with this podcast at all, and it's just eye-opening. It's hard to wrap your head around. Like, I don't know. I don't even know what to think about all this anymore, honestly.
You're literally kind of I guess what, brainwashed to think like these SEALs are, American heroes, right? I mean, there's movies, there's books about it.
Yeah, we all saw Charlie Sheen's movie.
Yeah, exactly. and then as you get older and you look into things and we speak to people like you're like, holy shit, it's a lie. Not all of it, but there's some of these stories that it's a lie, and they're actually some really horrible people that are within the Navy SEAL community or the Navy in general.
It's just power.
And yeah, power and greed. And when in a small community, when there is everyone fighting for a few jobs, right? There's only so many admirals and rear admirals and vice admirals in the Navy SEAL community, right? There's only so many teams to be a commander of. There's, it is a cutthroat in the officer level, and then on the enlisted level, to become a command master chief for a team, that's a select few that get that, and there is a competition, and there is, there's dirty play, right? People do certain things to get promoted. They do it in the fire department and police department everywhere.
Oh yeah,
it's human nature. So I don't doubt that. And I've said this too. I don't care what happens in war. War is war.
Right.
Most things that happen in war, no one fucking knows about. Why? Because people just don't fucking talk about it. They're not going to have the conversation about the village that got fucking shot up because we gave their order, and we're just going to not talk about that. And that's okay, because that's what happens in war. But when you take a fuck up and then start manipulating the truth in order to use it as a propaganda piece or a way to make money, whether it's for the government or individually, which a lot of times happening as well. I could go into the drug world and how, Afghanistan, farmers were paid by the CIA to grow poppy instead of soybean or whatever else they would plant. They were paid to plant.
That makes sense. That makes sense because we had a guy on who said they were literally tasked with burning the poppy fields, and then next deployment or next time he was deployed, they were tasked with protecting him.
Yeah.
It's just, and then you hear stuff like that, you're like, oh wow, connecting the dots, like what the hell is going on here?
And there's a magical connecting piece. That's the CIA. Right? They are and have always been in every facet of humanity. They have their hand in, and most of it not good. And whether it's regime change or whatever, they're involved in everything. And again, I don't want to be an enemy of the CIA. No desire.
Same, brother.
But I know that I'm not working in a vacuum where the Navy SEALs are this anomaly unit in our military, and everyone else is living in this world of perfection and doing God's work. And for years, and you touched on it with the Vietnam era, they were the CIA has used the Navy SEALs as an extension of the agency for years. And that's how the power structure changed during GWAT, was that the most amicable people to the CIA involvement were the Navy.
Right.
The people that had the longest history of success, or at least loyalty, was the Navy. And that's how they were able to, with no experience, take over missions that had such consequence to them and not be held accountable for their failure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the CIA was involved within Robert's Ridge, and I mean that whole People Labor, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I mean that all makes sense. Why People Labor was relieved of command, or not maybe relieved, but kind of pushed, like you said, to JV team, and then these SEALs are taking over. Like this guy literally did so much pre-planning for this mission. Literally drove all the roads himself, and then it's game day, and now he's on the bench. Like, what is going on?
Yeah, and like, yes, there's a lot of aspects to that. And I was just going to touch on your point with, it's even larger than just like the CIA, right? Because you think of USAID, the State Department.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
all that stuff that, those guys are just extensions of them, right?
Yeah, it's compartmentalized is a word that they use for everything, right? Everything's compartmentalized, but it is one person's got one task. You don't know why you're doing that task, but you're going to send that to this person. You don't know that person. You don't even know what that person does, but you're going to send that information to them. And then that makes its way to the people that need to have it out in the field. Yeah. And they make it so that there is nobody that can be a whistleblower to the entire thing, just a small piece of it.
Right.
And whether it's USAID, who I have a buddy of mine from the Army that works with them, I would assume he's not dirty, but fuck, I don't know. It's all manipulation of global climate, right? Not climate weather, climate temperature, as far as the people, the cultures. And I think there is, America doesn't stay the most powerful nation on the planet simply because the dollar is stronger than any other currency.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And, as much as I am a Trump guy and I voted for him, and I'm a staunch constitutional Republican conservative, Donald Trump shit the bed for me. His two boys went to school and were taught by Job Price's father.
No shit.
They were coached by Job Price's father on the lacrosse team. I have emails between Job's father and Donald Jr. prior to the 2016 election asking for him to help. And Don Jr. replying saying, if my father gets elected, I will make sure this is a priority for him. Well, that was 2016-17. And we're now in 2025 and I haven't heard a fucking peep.
Yeah.
Huh.
They won't return emails. They won't return anything. And that to me, again, I think Trump's doing a lot of great things. But when it comes to what I need today for my life to be better and for Job's family's life to be better, I need someone to fucking do a single function, which is change a clerical keystroke. Click a different box. Open up the pathway for the things that he earned, right? He was 19 and a half years in the Navy. He was 6 months from a fucking pension. He's earned that. He had $1 million life insurance policy. He earned that.
Yeah, right. It's not like you're fighting for something wild, right? You're just, this whole fight is just to try to like bring some form of justice and just peace and just something to his wife to like make it all better, right? Like you said, he earned his pension and all that. Like it can improve her life, things of that nature. It's just like, just simple
Job's
stuff.
Dad was the reason why I did this. Like he's a man's man. Like he would smoke cigarettes on the sideline coaching lacrosse games. and if it was a windy day, I heard these stories, he would have the team huddle around him to block the wind so he could light his fucking cigarette. Like he was just, and he was associate headmaster at a very prestigious private school outside of Philadelphia. And that's where the Trump boys went. And, he was a man's man in a world of elites.
Yeah.
And he was a guy that I got to really appreciate and admire, and his passion for his son. My biological father's dead, and he was a fucking piece of shit. I would have loved my dad to give a fuck about me that much.
Right, brother.
And I made a promise to him that I would do everything I can to bring his son justice. And he died of cancer in April of last year. And I sat in his Job's sister's house where he was staying in his final days. And we were sitting there, and I was talking with him. We were just telling stories, and I knew he was terminal, and he was on hospice. And I said, Mr. Price, I really wish I'd have gotten to know you better during when I was younger and been closer friends with Job, so we could have, I could have experienced you and your mentorship all these years instead of just, these last five years. And he looked at me and he says, you may not have been Joe's best friend when he was alive. You're the best friend he's ever had since he's died.
Agreed.
And that has stuck with me more than anything. And it's the final piece of why I continue to still do this is because I don't want to let that man down. And I want to live up to that, what he thought of me. And, and for the record to anybody, I have never charged a dime. I've never even paid a dime. I've done thousands of hours of pro bono work for this because I don't sell hope.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to charge a family member for the hope that I might be able to do what I say I'm going to do.
Right.
So I do it for nothing because that's how I can live with myself. And, Job's sister is very close to me and she's a great lady. And, she is my partner in crime in this. She's the one that's helping me stay motivated, and I with her as well. And Job's wife may not be the most active participant over the last 6 years, but she was still his wife, and she's still the mother of his child, and his child still misses her father, and they deserve to have the benefits that he's earned. And my promise will be fulfilled if I can get his manner of death changed. They can close it out, like I said, make it a cold case. I'm not going to dig anymore. No one else is going to dig anymore. I will not be out in any podcast. I won't write a book. There will be nothing. I will go away. And I think Job's sister will do the same, and so will Job's wife.
I hope to God that happens, brother. And
Me too.
in his last moments in a few days on Earth, I'm sure that was very important to him because he knew you would do everything in your power to make that happen, and you're proving it, and you keep doing it day in and day out, man. But I want to touch on the pension thing. That's not something that someone would do, right? Job was smart enough to get that $1 million pension or life insurance. He was close to getting his pension. That's someone who's depressed isn't going to commit suicide, right? Knowing that those things will be negated,
And he was scheduled. He was on the Admiral track.
Exactly.
Like he was going to a war college in June. So this was December. In June, he was going to go back in March. I think June was when he was going up to Rhode Island to a war college to get his master's degree or his PhD. I don't know what some level of college that he needed in order to get into that Admiral track. And that's everybody who's ever worked with Job loved him, except his guys who didn't like the fact that he was a fucking hard ass, and he wanted them to do their job with a little bit of military bearing and honor. And it's sad that that's how Job's selfless service was rewarded. And there will be justice in this life or the next. And I'll stay in the fight as long as it takes. But I have a couple moves left that are still in the arsenal, and I'm hoping I don't have to use them. And everybody, I get a lot of hate from people in the comments, the fucking idiots on YouTube. And I engage them because it's fun and it builds the algorithm, increases it. But the reality is this: I don't care what anybody thinks of me. I don't care if you think that because I came from a small police department where I don't give a fuck. The reality is I'm right.
Right.
And that I have scientific proof to prove that I'm right. And you can hate on me because you don't think that I'm qualified enough to have this level of access or attention, because people are like, there's no way you'd get that information. You have no fucking idea who I talk to. You have no idea the people that I talk to that have access to that information.
Right.
How did I hear the recorded conversation that is not public knowledge of the after action briefing between the Command Master Chief and SEAL Team 6 Red Squadron, who were on the UBL raids right after the UBL raid? How did I hear that?
Right.
How did I know what Rob said and then have Rob go to me, I don't know who your sources are, but they're fucking good.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care what people think of me. And I don't care if you think that I'm qualified or I'm full of shit or I'm trying to get famous. I can promise you this: I'm not famous. I sure as fuck am not getting rich off of it.
Right.
And, my upside is zero, other than my own ego and wanting to be right.
Well, do us a favor. Before you burn the village, let this episode air.
Yeah.
Well, brother, I mean, thank you thank you for fighting that fight, man, because there's not a lot of people out in this world that would do so. I mean, case in point, we can talk about this for hours of how people are jumping on the train of trying to cover these things up. And, you know, we talked about it off camera, but we do appreciate you coming on Beyond the Dispatch and telling your story and getting justice for Job, because it really looks like no one else is doing it. And we're happy to share the story, man. We really are.
Appreciate
Honestly,
you both.
yeah, man.
Well, brother, we appreciate you joining us today. Do you have any final words you want to say before you take off?
Yeah. If anybody that was on that deployment or was in the teams that has information they'd like to share, we have a website that has some Proton email addresses for some of the investigative people that are working with me. Go to Who Killed Job, J-O-B, Price, Price.com. And there's information there on how to link up with us. You know, my YouTube channel is Matt Cubbler, Mattcubbler. Same thing with Instagram. You know, I respond to every message. It's not like I'm not, I get a lot of them, but it's, for me, if you're willing to have a conversation with me about something, I'm willing to have a conversation back. So, you know, it's a lonely space to be in, but I do have a lot of supporters through social media, through YouTube, and people in the community. So I'm not doing this alone, but it feels a little overwhelming at times. Like,
oh, I believe it.
Could only imagine.
I am thankful for it.
Yeah, brother. We believe it, and we're going to do our best to support you any way we can, man. God, it's just, there's so many wrongs that need to be right in this world. And if you're a God-fearing person, do the right thing. You know what the right thing is. You know, step forward, do the right thing. We appreciate you guys tuning in to another episode of Beyond the Dispatch. Please subscribe, leave a comment. We have more to come. Take it easy.